When the HOA officers crept into the neighborhood at midnight, they thought no one would notice. But one grandfather's sharp eyes set off a chain of events that exposed a secret inspection scheme and united an entire community overnight. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you are listening. Your support means everything. Oak Ridge Lane was the kind of neighborhood people described as safe. Children left bicycles on lawns, porch lights glowed softly, and everyone waved to each other during evening walks. The Homeowners Association HOA had strict rules about lawns, fences, even the color of mailboxes, but most accepted it as the price of order. Grandpa Henry moved in with his daughter's family 2 years earlier. A retired postal worker, he valued routine. Every night, he would make a cup of chamomile tea and sit near the window overlooking the front yard. He claimed it helped him sleep. But in truth, Henry liked watching the rhythm of the neighborhood at night. The stillness comforted him. That night, however, something disturbed that rhythm. A faint movement near the far end of the cul-de-sac caught his eye. The silhouette slipped through the shadows, heading toward the house across the street. Henry leaned forward, narrowing his eyes. Midnight wasn't a usual time for visitors. At first, Henry wondered if they were teenagers playing a prank. Oak Ridge occasionally had kids daring each other to sneak through backyards. But these figures moved differently, purposeful, deliberate, not playful. Their uniforms caught the glow of a streetlight briefly. Dark jackets, HOA badges. That made Henry's brow furrow. What is the HOA doing out here at this hour? He reached for his glasses, slid them on, and peered again. The men opened a side gate to the neighbor's property. They didn't knock. They didn't call out. They simply entered. Henry muttered, "That's not right." He quietly set his mud down and moved toward the back hallway. His daughter, Claire, had installed motion sensor lights around the yard for security, but they weren't triggered yet. If the men were checking property, they were avoiding the usual procedures. Henry's sense of responsibility, built over years of community work, stirred. He wasn't one to jump to conclusions, but he believed in accountability. Midnight inspections. That was a first. Henry decided to alert someone before stepping outside. He climbed the stairs carefully and knocked on Claire's bedroom door. "Dad," she mumbled, half asleep. "There are people outside," Henry whispered urgently. "HOA uniforms." Sneaking into Jensen's yard, Claire sat up quickly, brushing hair from her face. "What, at this time?" "Midnight," Henry confirmed. Within minutes, her husband, Mark, joined them. He was skeptical but concerned. He grabbed his phone to record, just in case. Down the hall, Lily, their teenage daughter, overheard and peeked out, curious but nervous. "Stay inside," Claire warned her. The family moved to the downstairs windows. From there, they saw flashlights darting in the neighbor's backyard. It wasn't an illusion, someone was definitely there. Mark whispered, "This isn't normal. Even the HOA has office hours." Henry nodded. "I'm going to step out. If they're legitimate, they can explain themselves." Claire hesitated but trusted her father's steady nature. He wasn't reckless. He was precise. Henry slipped on a jacket and quietly exited through the back door. The night air was crisp. He walked along the fence line until he was close enough to call out but not cornered. "Excuse me." His voice rang clearly, firm but controlled. The two men jumped slightly, spinning toward him. Their flashlights caught his face. One of them immediately tried to sound authoritative. "Sir, this is HOA business. Please return inside." "At midnight," Henry countered. "I've lived here long enough to know HOA inspections happen in daylight, with notice." The men exchanged glances. One pulled a clipboard closer to his chest. "We're conducting urgent inspections related to rule violations." "That's all you need to know." That's not how this works," Henry said calmly. "Either you explain properly, or we involve the police." His steady tone unsettled them. They were expecting sleepy residents, not a sharp-eyed elder who knew the bylaws. Meanwhile, Claire had turned on the porch lights, flooding the yard with brightness. Mark began recording from the kitchen window. Across the street, other houses stirred. Curtains twitched. A couple of neighbors turned on their floodlights too. The one stark cul-de-sac transformed into a stage. The two whole men, caught in the spotlight, were no longer in control of the narrative. Mrs. Jensen, the homeowner whose yard they were inspecting, opened her back door in confusion. "What on earth is going on?" she called. The men stammered, trying to maintain authority. "Routine inspection, Mum. Routine." "At this hour?" she shot back, clearly upset. The murmurs from nearby houses grew. People stepped onto porches with phones ready to record. Oak Ridge was a rule-following neighborhood, but trespassing, even by the HOA, didn't sit well with anyone. Henry stood firm by the fence, his posture calm but commanding. The two whole men shifted nervously, no longer shielded by darkness. Behind him, Claire stepped outside with her phone flashlight on, her voice steady but sharp. "You can't be on private property without notice or permission. This is trespassing." One of the men adjusted his jacket nervously. "We have authorization from the board," he said. "Then show us," Claire demanded. The man flipped through his clipboard, pretending to find documents. But there were none, just some blank inspection forms. Mark, still recording, whispered, "They don't have anything." Mrs. Jensen, in her robe and slippers, crossed her yard to join them. "This is my property." "Who exactly approved this midnight visit?" The taller man hesitated. "We received complaints about unauthorized structures in backyards. We're checking for violations before the board meeting tomorrow at midnight," she repeated incredulously. By now, more neighbors gathered along fences and driveways. The quiet night had turned into a neighborhood assembly. What began as a strange observation had become a community standoff. Henry had lived through decades of community disputes, from zoning changes to neighborhood watch conflicts. He recognized a pivotal moment when he saw one. "This isn't about violations," he said clearly, so everyone could hear. "This is about boundaries. There are rules even for the HOA." Mark nodded, still filming. "Everything's being recorded," he added. "If you have legal permission, there's no issue. But if you don't, this is evidence." Across the street, Mr. Alvarez, a soft-spoken man who rarely joined HOA meetings, finally spoke up. "The bylaws state inspections require 48-hour notice. I helped write that section. You're violating the rules you're supposed to uphold." The crowd murmured in agreement. The two men's confidence visibly deflated. Their late-night inspection had turned into a public embarrassment. One whispered to the other, "We should call Brian." "Do it," Henry said firmly. "Call whoever authorized this. We're not going anywhere." After a few tense minutes, the men reluctantly made a phone call. The name Brian referred to Brian Carter, the HOA vice president, a man known for his strict interpretations of rules and a fondness for control. When Brian answered, the taller man explained the situation nervously, glancing at the growing crowd. "Yes, they're all here." "No, they're not letting us leave quietly." They handed the phone to Henry at his request. "This is Henry Thompson," he said into the phone. "I've lived here 8 years. You sent people to trespass at midnight. Explain yourself." Brian's tone was defensive. "We received complaints about unauthorized sheds and renovations. The board agreed to a pre-inspection before tomorrow's meeting. We need to document violations." "At midnight," Henry repeated slowly. "There was no time during the day," Brian replied curtly. Henry took a breath. "Brian, you're violating privacy, state law, and the HOA's own bylaws. You didn't notify homeowners. You didn't get consent. This isn't inspection, it's trespass. And now the entire neighborhood is watching." Silence. Then Brian tried to save face. "I'll handle it in the morning." Henry handed the phone back. The men received quick instructions to leave immediately. Their authority dissolved like mist in sunlight. As the two HOA men retreated down the street, escorted by the collective glares of the neighborhood, something unexpected happened. People stayed outside. Mrs. Jensen, still shaken, thanked Henry and Claire. "If you hadn't seen them, I'd never have known they were in my yard." Mark stopped recording but saved the video carefully. "This needs to go to the board meeting tomorrow," he said. "They can't just act like this didn't happen." Mr. Alvarez nodded. "I'll bring my copy of the bylaws." What they did was completely out of line. Neighbors who barely interacted before began discussing security, rights, and the importance of attending home meetings. The midnight intrusion had, ironically, united them more effectively than any community barbecue. Henry watched quietly, a slight smile forming. He hadn't planned to lead anything tonight. He simply acted on instinct. But seeing families talking, exchanging phone numbers, and promising to show up tomorrow made him proud. The following evening, the whole board meeting was packed like never before. Chairs overflowed into the hallway. Residents who usually ignored these meetings filled every corner. Brian sat at the front, looking uneasy. "Henner,